Theorizing that one could do parody reviews within his own lifetime, Glen the Geek stepped into the Geeky Gallery and vanished. He awoke to find himself trapped in the past, facing bad movies that were not his own, and driven by an unknown force to watch better ones. His only guide on this journey is Cal, an observer from his own time, who appears in the form of a mild-mannered reporter that only Glen can see and hear. And so, Curator Glen finds himself reviewing from film to film, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping each time that his next review will be the review home.
Oh boy. Bum 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 Hi, I'm Glen. Welcome to the first episode of the Geeky Gallery. Comic books are everywhere these days, from video games to toys to television and especially movies. Superheroes are big box office, and while many would cite successes such as the MCU for making the genre mainstream, I would go back a little further. In a time before Guardians defended the galaxy or Avengers assembled, there was Superman. Released in 1978, Superman the movie was the first big blockbuster superhero movie to embrace a realistic style. Verisimilitude, as mandated by director Richard Donner, would be the driving force behind the film. First and foremost for him was that audiences believed that Superman could fly. His vision worked, and the film became a smash success, grossing over $300 million in its original theatrical run. It also made Christopher Reeve a household name and spawned 3 sequels. Today in the gallery we'll be examining one of those sequels, 1983's Superman 3. Directed by Richard Lester and starring a returning Reeve as Superman, the film's most notable addition to the cast was comic legend Richard Pryor. This should probably have been a hint that there was going to be a change in tone. Pryor was reportedly offered the role following an interview with Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, when he stated that he would enjoy being in a Superman movie. The film also stars Robert Vaughn, Annette O'Toole, Pamela Stevenson, and Annie Ross, all of whom got the parts after they told a friend, who told a friend, who told a friend. Or auditions. While I remember liking this movie as a kid, I'm pretty sure there's a very thick fog of nostalgia to work through here. So let's get started. This is Superman 3.
Stop! Don't do it! The people!
Oh, cut that out. You're not even from this movie. The film opens with Darkseid preparing to destroy all of Metropolis.
Crawl on your knees and beg for my favor. I don't much like bullies. Darkseid's will is to be obeyed.
Come in! Yes, excuse me, sir. That's not what happens at all. It actually, it starts in an unemployment office. With Superman swooping in to save the collapsing, burning building? Not exactly. With the Man of Steel showing up to foil a kidnapping. With Richard Pryor coming to collect his unemployment benefits, actually. No. Yeah, it's pretty uneventful. It does a little more than establish that Pryor's character is chronically unemployed. That's pretty lame. Any thoughts on how we can do Richard Pryor? I don't think so. Did you ever see Soul Man? Wait. You're not suggesting... It'll be fine. There's not a lot of people watching. Absolutely not. Nobody's going to be okay with that. Don't worry. I got us covered.
Hey, what's happening?
Here, read this. Try to make it natural.
As a young black man with a sense of humor, I truly appreciate the obscurity of Entertainment Mensa's parody of 1986's Soul Man for this sketch.
Good. That's good.
So, you still got my $100, man?
Get out. We begin with August Gus Gorman arriving at the Metropolis Unemployment Office. Next, please. Yes, hi, I'm Gus Gorman. I'm here to collect my unemployment benefits. It's been 36 weeks, Mr. Gorman. You're no longer eligible. Next, please. Can I have the next person, please? Distraught by his rejection, Gus goes outside and stumbles immediately upon a Deus Ex Machina. I guess I'll try my hand at computers. The opening credits are one of the most slapstick-heavy, silly openings of a movie I've ever seen. Gone are the epic, sweeping, galactic credits of the first two films, replaced by, and I'm not kidding here, an out-of-control roller skater, falling phone booths, a blind man with the absolutely worst trained service dog, bank robbers who I'm pretty sure get away, a broken gumball machine and all the pratfalls that entails, a pie to the face, and much, much more, including a mime. That's right. They went there. Superman 3 opens with a mime. Nope, no, not happening, not here. Nope, no way. Get out. Yeah, you heard me. Get out of here. I said no! As it turns out, Gus is inexplicably good at computers, despite no prior training or experience. Computers are easy. Meanwhile, at the Daily Planet, Clark Kent convinces Perry White to allow him to go back to Smallville so that he can write a story about his high school reunion. And we are reminded that Lois Lane is a character in this series. For about 5 minutes. Over in the main story, Gus is so confident in his new skills, he decides to get a job. I'll get a job at Websco. Now that I'm an expert on computers, I'm sure it'll go fine. It does not. Gus is disappointed when he sees his first Websco paycheck. But during a brief conversation with a coworker, he discovers a large amount of half-cents aren't being applied to the checks. He then realizes that they can be accessed through the computers, and so he begins the process of embezzling them. Because that's what this Superman movie is about, apparently. While en route to Smallville, Clark, accompanied by Jimmy Olsen, comes across a chemical fire. Looking to get photos of the catastrophe, to impress Perry. Jimmy rushes in, and of course, soon finds himself in danger. Clark quickly changes into Superman, saves Olsen and the workers, only to discover that the factory is producing a temperature-sensitive acid that will explode and kill thousands. He springs into action, but instead of using his super breath to cool the acid or put out the fire entirely, the Big Blue Boy Scout flies out exactly 5 miles to a nearby lake. Using the aforementioned super breath, he freezes a thin layer of water, flies it over the factory, and drops it. This melts the ice, therefore creating rain, which puts out the fire, cools the acid, and saves the day.
Up, up, and away!
With the crisis averted, Clark continues on to Smallville and the all-important high school reunion. Once there, he's reunited with his high school crush Lana, who is played by his future mother? Also in attendance is his childhood bully turned town drunk Brad, as well as several other acquaintances and friends. Strangely, no doubt being the most famous face on the planet, no one seems to recognize this giant picture of Clark as being the last son of Krypton. Makes sense. During this scene, with no explanation whatsoever, this happens. I got nothing. Returning to Metropolis, Gus's plan has worked, and he receives a check for over $84,000. Which he quietly stashes away, and of course does nothing remotely suspicious. Eventually, his embezzlement catches the attention of Ross Webster, the film's villain. Needless to say, he is not happy with the theft, and wants the guilty party found. I'm not happy with this theft, and I want the guilty party found. We now take a break from actual crime being committed in this superhero movie to bring you Smallville Bowling. Clark, Lana, and her son Ricky go bowling. And in order to boost the young man's confidence, Clark sneezes him a strike, destroying all the pins and drawing absolutely no attention to himself whatsoever. Nothing to see here, folks. Not a thing to see. Go about your business. That's right. Nothing to see here, folks. Everybody go home. That's right. You can just go now. You over there. I see you. You guys can go. No photos. No, we're good. Have a good night. Meanwhile, at the Websco office, Ross, along with his sister Vera and his psychic nutritionist Lorelei, confronts Gus about the embezzlement. But instead of calling the police like a normal person, decides to bring Gus in on a plot to take over the world. Gus, I want you to hack into the Vulcan satellite and destroy all the coffee in Colombia. After all, he who controls the coffee controls the world. Back in Smallville, Clark, Lana, and Ricky go on a picnic together. It includes a tender moment between Clark and Lana, but the thing I take most from it is that Clark Kent likes dog food. No, seriously, the secret identity of our hero eats and enjoys dog food in this scene. Not kidding. Go ahead, go watch it. I'll wait.
This is no fantasy. No careless product placement.
This food is the best, it's huge. Believe me, they tell me all the time. Are you a man or a woman with particular tastes? Are you always on the go? Are you a reporter for a major metropolitan fake news organization?
Why, yes. Yes, I am.
You hungry now?
I could eat.
Eat this.
Isn't this,
Eat it.
Okay.
That's okay. That's amazing.
It's actually not bad once you get used to it.
That's huge.
That's actually pretty good.
That's Kelpo.
Kelpo Prime Cuts for adult dogs. It's huge. It's the best. We wouldn't put anything into your dog that we wouldn't put into you. Go get some. It's the best. Believe me.
See? Wasn't that gross? But I am happy to report that the picnic scene does include an actual appearance from Superman. Ricky, while chasing his dog in a field, slips and falls and hits his head on a rock, and is nearly killed by a wheat thresher until the last son of Krypton saves the day.
All right, finally.
We're not reenacting that one.
Damn it!
In order to prevent the authorities from tracking their scheme, Ross decides to send Gus to do the hacking at an obscure subsidiary of Websco, which just so happens to be in Smallville, features a scene of him literally running into Clark, and also just happens to be where Alcoholic Brad works.
Plot. I'm hacking. Shh. Much like the opening credits, the hacking scene is a series of slapstick antics, including an ATM spewing money, fruit humor, and traffic lights that become sentient. Don't ask. But, on the bright side, at least this time, there's no mime. Back in Metropolis, atop Webster's private rooftop ski resort, Ross, Vera, and Lorelei begin hearing news reports of the vicious storm laying waste to Columbia. They even begin plotting a new scheme when Gus arrives to tell them that the big blue Boy Scout has thwarted their plan. And although Gus describes it excitedly, we, the audience, are only allowed to see a scant few seconds of his heroics. After all, why waste precious seconds on Superman in this Superman movie when we can focus on Gus in a pink tablecloth? Naturally, Ross is enraged and demands they find a way to stop Superman.
I am enraged! I demand we find a way to stop Superman!
After a brief discussion, the group decides to kill the Man of Steel. Their plan is for Gus to use the Vulcan satellite to scan the ruins of Krypton for traces of kryptonite. They will then use the ingredients to create a synthetic version to use against him. Unfortunately, before they can initiate their plan, the movie comes to an abrupt end when Gus, wearing the aforementioned tablecloth, skis off a 50-story building and falls to his death. Just kidding, he lives.
Back with Gus, following a brief use of the Vulcan, the plan hits a small snag. Although Gus finds most of the ingredients for kryptonite, one of the elements remains unknown. Improvising, he decides to substitute it with tar, figuring the 0.57% will make little to no difference. He then sends the list off to the lab to be synthesized. While he waits for the finished product, Gus decides to try his hand at solving some of life's greater mysteries, like Bigfoot, Atlantis, or how to make an obscure video about a 1980s superhero movie go viral.
Meanwhile, Lana invites Superman back to Smallville to celebrate Ricky's birthday. The town uses this opportunity to not only thank him for saving Ricky's life, but also averting the chemical fire crisis. It's also a very special moment for us, because it marks the halfway point of this movie. Gus and Vera use this opportunity to try the kryptonite on Supes. Disguised as army personnel, they award Superman with the kryptonite, but are surprised when it has seemingly no effect. Several hours later at Lana's house, although there were no initial effects, the synthetic kryptonite has clearly begun to affect Kal-El, as he seems distracted and even lustful.
Caught up in the moment with Lana, Big Blue fails to make it to the scene of an accident in time to save a truck from crashing off a bridge. No one is killed, but it is devastating nonetheless, as we all know how deeply Superman cares about the destruction of property.
Following the truck accident, Superman goes on what I suppose the filmmakers would call a rampage. He straightens out the Tower of Pisa and even blows out the Olympic torch. And while this is clearly meant to represent evil Superman, I would call him more slight inconveniences Superman. Back at Websco, Ross and the gang, hearing news of slight inconveniences Superman's sinister exploits, begin to put together a plan. However, Gus, feeling that he hasn't been compensated properly, demands Ross build him a supercomputer that he's recently designed. Because apparently he's a computer designer and engineer now. Gus, my boy, I'll do it. You'll get your computer and I'll get my oil. After all, he who controls the oil controls the world. I thought it was coffee. Well, now it's oil. Setting the plan in motion, Gus soon takes over all the pumps, wells, and tankers in the world, except one. Bound for Metropolis, the lone ship's captain ignores the computer's requests and continues on towards the city. Ross decides to send Lorelei to the Statue of Liberty to pose as a jumper in hopes of getting the Jerk of Steel's attention. The plan succeeds and the big blue butthole disables the remaining tanker. He also causes an oil spill. But that doesn't matter because it's time to return to Lorelei and have his way with her. Because That's the power of boners, pal. Super boners. Back in Metropolis? The last asshat of Crapton has taken to drinking. No doubt due to the distressing amount of ease in which he was able to be hit with YouTube copyright claims. Things finally come to a head as Kal-El's two personalities finally meet face to face.
Superman! Save us! It's just a slump! You're in the right!
Are you sure we can't see the beard?
Yeah, that was great. We'll fix it in post.
Sorry if this is a bad time. You vex me, sir. Me? I'm sorry. I guess I'll talk to you later. What are you? Chicken? Nobody calls me chicken. The fight that follows has been building for what seems like minutes. Fully restored, Superman sets out to right the wrongs of his evil alter ego.
Not a bird, not a plane, you're finally out of that slump. With crypto's good and full of row. Lex can't get to you, staying good makes you cool. With crypto's good and full of row. Good is better, crypto's goodness. Good is better with Crypto's good and full of row. Cryptos, the good maker.
As construction of the supercomputer concludes, our villains make their way out to the canyon where it has been hidden, arriving at the last-second plot device that will allow them many evil opportunities. Look at that. Isn't it magnificent? With this device, we can take over the entire world's supply of paprika. After all, he who controls the spice controls the world. That's Dune. Honestly, who cares at this point? True. Superman arrives to confront our villains, only to be greeted by Atari graphics and sound effects, as well as a salvo of ineffective missiles. Entering the chamber, the last son of Krypton immediately ghosts Lorelei. I mean, he literally tells her he does not know who she is mere minutes after sleeping with her. Subsequently, the computer identifies him both as a jackass and a threat, and it begins firing various attacks upon him, including electricity and bubbles. Ramping things up, the computer attacks with a beam of pure kryptonite energy, and just as it seems Supes will be defeated, Gus has a change of heart. He quickly disables the computer by removing its master control screw. That's not how computers work! You know what? We are so close to the end at this point, I'll take whatever the movie gives me. The computer does not stay disabled for long, as it soon restores its own power and resumes its attack on the last son of Krypton. Gus grabs an axe, smashes the emitter, and allows Superman to flee. With its greatest threat gone, the computer captures Vera, converts her into a cyborg, and begins to attack Ross, Lorelei, and Gus. The effects of the movie aren't much better. All seems lost when suddenly Superman returns, holding a container of acid from earlier in the film. The computer, not seeing it as a threat, pulls Superman and the container into itself, hoping to assimilate him, much as it did with Vera. The heat in the processing core activates the acid, causing it to eat through the computer, resulting in an explosive, fiery victory for the last son of Krypton. In the aftermath, Superman clears the rubble to rescue Gus, who is now his friend. Seems legit. In exploration of this new friendship, let us take a moment to explore the actions of Gus Gorman. Over the course of this film, Gus commits embezzlement and several other acts of fraud. He commits trespassing, hacking, destruction of property, conspiracy to commit murder, impersonating an officer, terrorism, and worst of all, laughing too loudly inside a theater. What a monster!
What did I tell you about using the bell for comedic purposes?
And what are his punishments for these crimes? Nothing. In fact, the Man of Steel gives him a job recommendation at a coal mine.
Are you telling me that the man committing these crimes is walking around free, while I, Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time, is left wallowing in a prison?
To be fair, you did plot to destroy half of California and New Jersey back in Superman 1. In my defense, who would actually miss New Jersey? Fair point. Besides, I didn't actually destroy it. Only because Superman stopped you.
Exactly. I don't belong here.
You still plotted to do it. A minor technicality, I assure you. You realize you just proved my point for me, right? Look, I got a review to finish. See you in 20.
This is discrimination. I will have my revenge. I'm serving notice. Soon all of Metropolis will learn.
Right. So, wrapping things up here, Clark gets Lana a job at the Daily Planet, Lois finally returns from vacation, and Clark straightens out the Tower of Pisa before flying into the sunset and thankfully ending Superman 3. Upon renewed viewing, it does not hold up well. It's not without good points, but they are far outweighed by its faults. The romance between Lana and Clark is believable enough, but it lacks the chemistry between Lois from the first two films. The film's plot is little more than a patchwork of random scenes leading into other random scenes. They just narratively waste the title character. The overall tone is scattered between goofy montages that feel out of place and dark, even mean-spirited scenes. Most of the jokes fall flat because of these tonal issues. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to find out if this was actually a sequel to Richard Pryor's film Some Kind of Hero from a year earlier, only this time with less Margot Kidder and a tiny bit of Superman. This brings us to the film's biggest problem, the lack of Superman. Christopher Reeve's performance is undoubtedly the highlight of the film, only most of the time that he's on screen, it's as Clark, not Superman. In fact, Superman is barely there. I timed it out. After excluding his evil side, because, he says that wasn't him, the Man of Steel, Superman, the title character, is only on screen for approximately 24 minutes. For those of you playing at home, that's less than a quarter of the movie. Is that true? Sadly, yes. Oh, obviously I'm going to need a better agent. And yet you made the next one. What was that? I didn't say anything. Without Superman present, one has to ask, why even call it Superman 3? During the production, the film underwent several different title changes, eventually settling on the most easy and obvious one. But I have a couple of suggestions that I'd like to make. Where in the world is Carmen Supermano? Clark v. Superman, Dawn of Just Us. Superman 3. Seriously, where the hell is Superman? And of course, my personal favorite, Oh Superman, where art thou? In closing, Superman 3 is a hot mess, but it's certainly well worth watching, if only to remind yourself of how dumb you were as a kid, or how easily entertained. Until next time, this has been the Geek...
Hold it right there. Did you just do an entire review without mentioning me?
Well, yeah, it's a review of Superman 3. You're really not part of it.
But I'm Batman.
Again, it's called Superman 3.
Wait a minute, isn't that the one with Richard Pryor?
Yep.
Wow, you're pretty brave. Doesn't get much worse than that.
You do realize you were in Batman and Robin, right?
Well, you don't have to get hurtful.
Martha! You know what? It's one thing to be messing with me like you have this whole time, but it's another to mess with my friend. This has got to stop. Martha! Excuse me, is this where I come to be reviewed for a superhero movie? Steve Trevor! This has been the Geeky Gallery. Have you been geeky today? I just reviewed this movie. It was the third Superman. Was it the best? Oh God, no. Certainly I can say I've seen worse. Have you seen part 4? Now that is a piece of crap. Have you seen part 4? Can we just give Man of Steel a rest? 3's not bad comparatively. There's been worse since '83. Try the new stuff if you dare, like Justice League if you can, or Batman v Superman, oh no. This has been my review of Superman 3. That's it, that's all, nothing left to see. There might be some prequels, or maybe a sequel, but I'll get around to them eventually. There might be some prequels, or maybe a sequel, but I'll get around to them eventually.
Superman! Oh, guess you can't hear us.